Later on, Sam Posey and Jack LaRoute will be joining us, but I think it is fitting here to say that on this absolutely perfect day for racing, we have had some marvelous, marvelous excitement. I think whenever you have speeds leading up to qualifying day, speeds that are in those 210, 211, 212 mile bracket, you begin to wonder, can they do it when the pressure is really on? Well, they have done it today, and as we have alluded to before, Tom Sneva has set a new record, not only for 1 lap, but also for the 4 laps, breaking the old mark by Teo Fabi of nearly 3 miles an hour. So let's bring in Jackie Stewart and say, what in the world is going on at Indianapolis, Jackie, with all this speed? Because I remember you well, 18 years ago when you came here and you thought, boy, if I could do 160.
Well, it's true, Bill. I think, thinking back a long way, 1966, I think my qualifying speed, which took me onto the 3rd row of the starting grid, was 159.974 miles an hour. A lot has happened since then, but a lot has happened in the last 12 months. I think really the increase of speed has just been the question of development. I think one of the great things about motorsport is that it's a gymnasium for the talent of these engineers in the motor industry. They've found the cars more aerodynamic this year. They've learned more about ground effects. They've perhaps had more efficient fuel metering units put on there, better burning in the combustion chambers, and it's just faster. And these cars are showing it round here. The speeds are quite incredible.
Whenever you have speed, of course, you increase the element of two things. Either the car breaking loose from the adhesion of the track or the car braking. We've had a number of incidents, fortunately only 2 really serious ones, but in practice we had some this morning, and then in qualifying we had one this afternoon, and we thought we would show it to you because Scott Brayton was involved in it. Earlier in the week in practice, he smashed up his backup car, and here's what happened in his regular car. Scott Brayton.
Well, Scott Brayton, a very talented young man, but in fact what happened today really compounds what Indianapolis stands for and what speed stands for. He comes down the front chute here. This is the front straightaway where they're reaching speeds of about 213 miles an hour just right here, which is down from our commentary position. He entered turn 1, and this is the picture as it was then. He went through the corner fine, and suddenly the car breaks loose at the wheel end. It spins many times, luckily spinning and slowing the car down. He hit the wall fairly hard, obviously wiping out the rear suspension unit. He's in the car, well low in the car there. You can just see the top of his helmet. He throws the steering wheel out because they're detachable steering wheels to allow the driver to escape quickly or be helped out by the emergency crews. The car took a heavy knock, but it is a fairly deformable structure, and even though he hit at a speed of close to, I suppose, 175 miles an hour to an immovable object, he was still unhurt. He was annoyed. You could see him hitting the front wheel, but he walked out of it.
He walked out of it. His first lap, by the way, on the qualifying run was 199 plus. And so he was really not in contention. He may have been pushing it just a little bit too hard because it looks like right there he lost it. And when that happens, you just hang on and hope that nothing really serious comes up. So Scott Brayton has survived 2 rather severe crashes this week, and he is through for 1984 at Indy. Now, as far as the field itself is concerned, there's the shot, by the way, of them talking to Scott Brayton, so you can see he was all right. They do take the precautionary hospital move, and he was pronounced okay. Here's a young rookie from Colombia, educated in England, Roberto Guerrero, and competed in Formula One. I don't know, Jackie, about his particular abilities, but I do know he's been running well over the 200 mark this week, and he just went by at 1 lap at 2:04.499.
Well, Guerrero is quite an experienced racing driver. In fact, in Grand Prix motor racing, he has been doing consistently in a mediocre level. He hasn't really been at the top end of the sport in Grand Prix motor racing, and because of that, he found himself without a drive for 1984 and came over here to race in the kart series of races, and of course run here at the Indianapolis 500, which is the pearl amongst the jewels with regards to the IndyCar series, and he's done very well indeed. Now, to go around at an average speed of 204.499 miles an hour is in fact very impressive. That was the 1 lap speed. This is him taking the green flag again. Remember, There are 4 laps. It's 2.5 miles around, so it's a 10-lap speed. His second lap was at 204.984 miles an hour. You can see that 204.904 showing there. He is a rookie here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, although, of course, having many races under his belt. Very experienced in Formula One motor racing, very talented young man. It looked to me like one of the pieces of the aerofoil in the bodywork seems to be loose. The left-hand side of the car, as you look at it, looks to me as if there might be a loose piece of bodywork. It may be the sun that's hitting the car there, but I saw on the left-hand side as he comes down the straightaway here, I seem to see part of the bodywork move just a moment ago. These cars are put together with what they call Zeus fasteners, and sometimes at the speed and the vibration that you can get, these cars can move, and it did look to me as if there was something there sticking up on the right-hand side of his car, and if that is the case, it's gone. Now, we saw it earlier there, and it has gone. The bodywork's flown off of the car. It's just an aerodynamic factor that at over 200 miles an hour can sometimes be absolutely drastic, and that has been a lucky situation for him. Had that happened in the middle of a corner, Bill, it could have been really a tragedy.
Well, let me tell you, if that had happened in the middle of a race, I'd hate to have been behind it.
Well, of course, terrible, because, of course, the cars behind would have been hit by that at these very high speeds. He must have seen that, obviously, because a driver's peripheral vision, that's one of the great talents of being a racing driver. You notice very small things occurring, and he would have caught that very clearly within his sight. Although they sit very low in the car, he sits a little higher than some of the drivers, and he has got the cockpit cut away that he can see the front wheel. So therefore I think he might have seen that bodywork start to rise up on that clip. This is here at first time happening. When I saw it, suddenly you see the car is in shape at that time, and look, it popped up. Now, these Zeus fasteners, they're like fasteners that you put down on a spring, and it turns with a screwdriver, and it really holds it down very well, but with the vibration and with the aerodynamics in there, it flies off. That could have been a real problem for him. Luckily, he got away from it.
I once had a cowl flap fly off an airplane, and I'll tell you, it does get your attention very, very quickly. So, that was live, and we'll be back live as Roberto Guerrero did a remarkable job of getting his car safely into the pit area. Back in just a moment.
Back to live.
And this is Bill Fleming, along with Jackie Stewart, Sam Posey, and Jack Arute at the famous Brickyard in Indianapolis. And if, Howard, you were disappointed with the action in tennis today, we certainly have not been disappointed with the action in motor racing. There have been some disappointments, however, within the afternoon, and this is one of them. A.J. Foyt, 4-time winner, 4-time pole sitter, went out and stood everybody on its ear down pit row with 109 plus on his first lap. Let's take a look at it, because it didn't end happily.
Well, A.J. took the...
Excuse me, 209, Jack.
Yes, 109 doesn't live too long nowadays, but A.J. Foyt did 209 miles an hour in this first lap. He took his green flag, and he took it with a tremendous cheer from the crowd. What an individual this man is. He carries a tremendous place in the hearts of the Indiana fans. And when he went out, they all stood up and clapped. He's always news, whatever happens, and here we saw it again. He came up with a 209-mile-an-hour lap, which could potentially have grown and put him into pole position. But as ever, he's controversial, and when things go wrong, they seem to always be in A.J.'s corner. He came down this front straight, and as he passed our commentary position, the engine suddenly began to sound a little flat. That was his 209-mile-an-hour lap, and 137, very fast, and right there, the engine went sour. What turned out to be a hold piston. He pulled off of the groove, and you could just imagine what A.J. was saying to himself, because he's not only the driver, he's the engine builder, he's the chassis builder, he's everything.
I'd rather not imagine what he was saying at that moment. A.J. Foyt, as I mentioned, 4-time winner, 4-time pole sitter, but strangely enough, he never won this race from the pole. One of the anomalies, let's say, of racing itself. Well, here's how things stand right now. We have about 2 hours and, 6 minutes to go. Tom Sneva at 210, a new track record on the inside of row 1, the coveted pole. Rick Mears, former winner of this race, at 207.8, quite a bit behind when you consider the tightness of the speeds this week. And then the young rookie, the son of Mario Andretti, Michael Andretti, on the outside of row 1. In row 2, Gordon Johncock, two-time winner. He won it in 73, again in 82, 207.5. Always a consistent man. Broke both legs last fall, and here he's back racing again. Mario Andretti at 207 had a great 3 laps, and then the engine quit coming out of turn 4. He literally coasted over the finish line, which you will see later on Wide World of Sports in quite a dramatic moment, and you'll hear from Mario. Herm Johnson came through with a 204.6, and that stood up to conclude the outside of row 2. Then Al Unser Sr., 3-time winner of this race, on the inside of row 3. Tom Gloy, a young rookie. Not really young as far as experience is concerned, but certainly new here to Indy-type cars. And Teo Fabi, the Rookie of the Year last year and the pole sitter a year ago, on the outside of row 3. So here's the way the rest of the field sets up. Al Unser Jr., Al Holbert, and Tony Bettenhausen in 4. Ray Howell, Ganassi, and Fittipaldi in row 5. Then Jose Legarza of Mexico and Jacques Villeneuve out of Canada, along with Danny Sullivan from Louisville, in row 6. ABC's Wide World of Sports coming to you next, and we'll have our live coverage from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on an absolutely perfect day. There are still some cars to run, and the pole still will be sought for, but so far, the man to beat is Tom Sneva. We'll be back. Year-old race driver from Ann Arbor, Michigan, is burning the track up. Howdy Holmes, one of the late qualifiers today, has averaged for 3 laps 207 miles an hour. If he can keep it up, he could nudge into that first row. This is his final lap on the qualifying run. Each driver takes 4 times around this 2.5-mile oval. Already today, we have had records set, and Howdy Holmes has been sitting on the sidelines watching some of the so-called big stars of racing. But his 3-lap average of 207 miles an hour could put him up there very, very close. His last lap, 208.237 miles an hour. And his qualifying speed is going to be very close to that 208 mark. So Howdy Holmes could make history here today for himself. He could move right next to Tom Sneva. In fact, unofficially, he has, in the 4-lap average, he has 207.977 miles per hour, and that is better than Rick Mears, who had 207.847. So live here, you have just seen young Howdy Holmes move into the middle of row 1. We'll be back with more from Indianapolis, but for more on Wide World, here's Kurt Gowdy. Indianapolis, Indiana, it's the first day of qualifying for the 68th running of the Indianapolis 500, which you will see on May 27th here in prime time on ABC. This could not be a more perfect day for automobile racing, or as a matter of fact, for just about anything else. Temperature 75 degrees, and I believe we have a record crowd here today to watch the fastest cars in the world out here with some of the greatest drivers in the world try to compete for the pole position. That's the inside of row 1, the coveted position that carries glory and fame and money. And the man who has it right now is Tom Sneva, the 1983 Indianapolis 500 winner. He did it with a record-setting 4-lap record of 210.029 miles an hour. But let's watch the record run. After his 209 and 209 plus first 2 laps, this is lap 3.
And this is the first time that a driver has ever gone round officially the Indianapolis Motor Speedway at a speed in excess of 210 mile an hour average. On the back stretch, they were catching him around 217 miles an hour, and that's where he is right now. And then he goes into turn 3 without even lifting off the throttle. He goes through there with his foot flat on the floor, just threading the needle around this great speedway. Keep in mind that as he goes out there, there's a great big concrete wall, as you see right there, and that's him coming down, completing his 3rd lap. He's about to get the white flag, which means that 1 more lap to go. The lap that you just saw was 210.423 miles an hour. Quite an incredible speed. You can see there that the average that he did and the time he had to beat, and you can see as well in excess of that. And this is the final lap, and of course it's very important for a driver to be able to keep it on for that final lap, because of course he's been given this indication that Rick Mears, of course, before he went out, he knew that Rick Mears was on the pole, and this is the final lap for him. 2.5 miles around this great oval. It's a 10-mile sprint.
So Tom Sneva, who set the qualifying record in both 77 and 78, has held on to another record, 210.689, the new one-lap record and the four-lap record. Jack Arute was down at that area when he came in with Tom Sneva.
Tom, 4 consecutive laps, 4 new track records. Is there anything more left in this car?
No, there's nothing more left in the car or me. We pretty well extended it. We set it up a little bit looser than we probably should have because I felt it would go to a push condition. It did go to a push condition. That's why the last couple laps might have been a little quicker because I couldn't run it really as hard as I needed to the first couple laps. But it worked out good for the 4-lap average, and we're happy with it.
A lot of your fellow drivers said before you went out you'd been sandbagging all week.
Well, you know, it doesn't pay any money to run past Thursday, Friday, those times, you know, and the guy's only got so many ticks in the old beeper here, and you don't want to waste any when it doesn't count.
The Indy 500 last year, the pole now. Can you make it 2 in a row?
That's why we came to Indianapolis in May this year. We're excited about the race potential for the Texaco Star.
Well, good luck to you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Tom Sneva had a wonderful comment to the public here when he said, let me tell you, it was a lot harder than it looked. Well, here's the way things stand right now, and we still have about an hour and 50 minutes officially of qualifying left today. Tom Sneva on the pole. Howdy Holmes has sneaked in there to get to the middle of the first row, and Rick Mears has been moved to the outside of row 1. Then, to begin row 2, we have Michael Andretti, the young son of Mario Andretti, Gordon Johncock, a 2-time winner, and Mario himself. Father is on the outside of row 2, setting up a rather interesting inter-family relationship if it should hold up. Herm Johnson, Al Unser Sr., and Tom Gloy in row 3. In row 4, we have the combination of Teo Fabi, Al Unser Jr., and Al Holbert. In the 5th row, Tony Bettenhausen, the youngest son of the late Tony Bettenhausen. On the inside, Bobby Rahal in the middle, and Chip Ganassi on the outside. In the 6th row, Emerson Fittipaldi, Jose Lagarza, and Jacques Villeneuve. There is an international field, a Brazilian, a man from Mexico, and one from Canada. And then Danny Sullivan is the 19th qualifier on the inside of the 7th row. Once again, I'm Bill Fleming, and with me is Jackie Stewart, and joining us also Sam Posey and Jack Arute. I think we should explain that this is a rather special day in the world of sports. It is one of 4 qualifying days for the Indianapolis 500 race, which will be run on May 27th, which is 2 weeks from tomorrow, and which you will see here exclusively in prime time on ABC. It's important because of tradition and many other things. There's a certain glamour and glory that goes with being the pole sitter. Many have sat there and have not won the race. Many have sat there and won the race. The thing that is important is that more men have won the race from the pole position than from any other spot in the 33-car field, a total of 12. And if you don't win the pole, it's good to be second best because there have been 10 winners from the second position or the inside or the middle side of the first row. But I think more than that, it's just the fact that you gain sort of racing immortality. And I think Teo Fabi came onto the scene, Jackie Stewart, a year ago. He was an unknown, he ran fastest, and everybody all of a sudden knew Teo Fabi. Now, when you raced here back in 66 and 67, everybody knew Jackie Stewart, world champion in racing, and it'd be interesting to know, since they're running, 50 miles an hour faster, what it would be like to go 50 miles an hour faster than you qualified.
Well, I hate to think about it, but these men are, and these cars are. Of course, technology is the great thing, and that has progressed here in motorsport. The speedway is the same. The drivers are basically the same. They're still the same human beings, but the cars themselves have become so much more sophisticated, Bill, and this is being seen today by the incredible speeds.
I think it is remarkable that 250,000 people or more would turn out to watch one car go around this 2.5-mile oval 4 times with nobody else on the track, and to sit here for, 7 hours and watch this happen. But this crowd today is truly fantastic. We have a perfect day for racing, and the emotion of the moment, the intrigue of the qualifying pole position day, I think can best be explained by a man who's been there before, and he, of course, is Sam Posey.
Bill, you wonder why so many people do come for qualifying. As you said, it's just one car on the track at a time. You know, the Speedway does no promotion whatsoever. These people just show up on their own. I think the story maybe goes a little bit like this. Unlike the race itself, which is chaos and confusion, and it's hard to follow everything that happens, here, for the true fan, is a chance to savor each and every nuance in a whole afternoon of activity. Something unique, after all, in racing. A major racing event that isn't a race. So, they come and they are able to enjoy something that proceeds sort of at the pace, kind of old world pace, of a baseball game, in a way. You know, I think that there's no question that there is a relationship also between the speeds that are turned here and the attendance by the crowd. At the deepest level, speeds mean something very big. The speeds are up, the crowds are up. The speeds are down, the crowds go down. I think people are fascinated by the extremes of human capability. And everyone here knows that when a man gets down into his racing car and straps those belts around him and goes out for those 4 laps, that they are seeing an absolute extreme. Any driver will tell you, and Tom Sneva told me last night, that there is no moment more difficult in the entire racing year than these 4 laps. I think people like to see people performing at the absolute limit. Bill, I think maybe that's part of it.
All right, thank you very much, Sam. And I think Teo Fabi said it last year. He said, I was an unknown, and all of a sudden I win the pole. I only run 48 laps in the entire race, but I'm a hero. And he said, I loved it. Joining our ABC commentator team for the first time this year at Indianapolis is Jack Arute, a versatile young man who has been a driver, an owner, a promoter, and just about everything in the world of motorsports. Jack, welcome to the crew, and why are they going so fast?
Well, thank you, Bill. And one must remember that in 1978, it was Tom Sneva that eclipsed the 200-mile-per-hour barrier for the first 4-lap qualifying effort. Now, today, we've seen the 210-mile-an-hour barrier break loose, and again, it was Tom Sneva. What has become of the 200-mile-an-hour barrier? Well, it's still a benchmark here at Indianapolis, but now it's a benchmark to determine whether you should keep your laps or not. Thus far today, of all the drivers that have qualified, only one is elected to go below the 200-mile-an-hour number for a 4-lap speed, and that, of course, was Danny Sullivan. The rest of them, if they turned 199 or less, they called themselves in, they went back to Gasoline Alley, and determined that they'd come back tomorrow. Back up to you, Bill.
Yes, isn't that remarkable that 18 out of 19 cars have been over 200 miles an hour in qualifying today? There's the first row, Tom Sneva, Howdy Holmes, and Rick Mears, but there are more people who could still qualify today and break in there. It would take a miracle, however, to remove Sneva. Back in a moment. Indianapolis and many other of the other motorsports always talk about speed, particularly Indianapolis, because of the tremendous speeds this year. We thought it would be a good idea to go around the country and ask various individuals how fast they thought these cars really went.
Just under 250 miles an hour, I think. 155, 160 miles an hour.
Perhaps 250 miles or kilometers.
Up to 700 miles per hour, something like that.
3 hours for 500 miles, so 175.
I don't know, I think they go about 5 miles an hour.
I don't think I know. I think I know it's against Michael Jackson.
A lot faster than a cab.
300 miles an hour.
100 miles an hour.
As fast as they want, I suppose.
Thank you.
Well, nobody guessed it quite right, but Tom Sneva has gone 210.029 for 4 laps here today. We'll be back with more of our live coverage of the time trials, the first day of qualifying for the pole sitter here at Indianapolis. You know, a couple of months ago, ABC Sports sent a crew to New York's Madison Square Garden to cover the American Cup Women's Gymnastics Championship. It proved to be an event that was prophetic in light of this week's announcement by many of the Eastern Bloc nations of their intention to withdraw from the Olympic Games in Los Angeles. Here now,
hour and 5 minutes left for qualifying in this first day of qualifying at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the 68th running of this classic event. We still have A.J. Foyt to try to qualify and a number of other drivers. Here's the scene just right now live as Steve Chassie, a young man who a year ago at the age of 38 and a rookie finished 11th in the race, came back out for his second qualifying attempt of the day. He ran 3 laps at a rather slow average of 197.9, and then on the 4th lap, Going into the third turn, something happened, Jackie Stewart.
The car had been loose in the previous 2 or 3 laps, and suddenly the car got a little bit loose there. It tweaked one way, then another way, overcorrected, and of course collided with the wall. It jammed its wheel up against the wall with Steve Chassis obviously still in the car. It seemed to catch fire at that time, and you can see some flame at the back. Remember, these cars run on alcohol, so you can't actually see flame. Now, Steve Chassis is okay. He stepped out of the race car. He's in okay condition. He has been taken to the field hospital here, which is compulsory in the regulations of the 500-mile speedway racetrack here, and he's gone there to get checked up. But the car, of course, badly damaged.
I mentioned earlier the story of A.J. Foyt, 4-time winner here, 4-time pole sitter. Jack Arute is with him.
Pit lane, and we're waiting to put the car back in the line. AJ, you brought out your backup car. What's the story?
Well, we're just trying to get in the race today. You know, it's a backup car. We have run a little over 200 miles an hour, and it's a good race car, similar to my other one, but we did have the other one fixed up, you know, special for qualifying. It's just one of the misfortunate things that happen.
The question, though, is will time run out before you can get through inspection?
We got our fingers crossed. We're hoping it don't.
Looking back through the line, it looks as if it may be a problem. AJ, 209 miles an hour was the fastest lap of qualifying, your first lap, and it may go by the boards. Do you think you can squeeze that much out of this car?
You never know. It's very possible. It's pretty much set up. It's a little bit stiffer than my other race car, but I kind of knew what the other car, and when you're talking about speeds after 205 miles an hour, you're kind of hanging it out pretty much. It gets hard after that, so mainly I'm just going to try to get in now.
Well, he's going to watch speed, but he's also got to watch the clock. Back to Bill Fleming.
All right, well, let's just bring you up to date with Tom Sneva sitting on the pole at 110.029 miles an hour, and his one-lap record, all-time, 210.689. Speed, of course, brings danger. Sometimes the cars break loose from the adhesion. Sometimes they break. Yesterday, young Michael Chandler, trying to enter the field for his 4th Indianapolis 500, did this. Slammed into the wall with intensive force.
Incredible impact. The young man hit the wall probably at a speed of in excess of 175 miles an hour. He was entering that corner at more than 200, probably close to 215 miles an hour. He scrubbed off some of the speed. He was driving one of Dan Gurney's Eagle cars with a Pontiac engine. Steve, you see him there, Mike Chandler. Good young man, a lot of talent, but a big accident.
And he is listed now only in serious condition, taken off the critical list, brain contusions, lacerations of the forehead, and lacerations of the left leg. Then, earlier today, Steve Krisilov, in practice, slammed into the wall. You saw the hood fly off that car.
Yes, very serious accident again. He has turned out to be in fair condition. He's okay. He's got a broken leg. His left leg was broken, but he was okay. When I saw that accident, I was very concerned for him, Bill, because he didn't move around much, as you can see. But there he moves his head. And there is Steve Krisilov, a veteran here at the Indy 500. A good man trying for this year's race, but it won't be this year.
So the field is now, with about 1 hour to go, filled with a total of 21 cars have filled the field. So we still have 12 spots available. Tom Sneva, Howdy Holmes, Rick Mears in the first row. In the second row, Michael Andretti, the young son of Mario. Gordon Johncock and Father Mario is on the outside of row 2. Everybody hoping it stays the same way with the two Andrettis in the same row. Herm Johnson, Al Unser Sr., and Tom Gloy in row number 3. And then, as it has turned out, Teo Fabi, last year's pole sitter, but who was disappointing in the race, is on the inside of 4. Then Al Unser Jr., Al Hulbert. Then row 5, Tony Bettenhausen, Bobby Rahal, and Pat Bedard, who has just gotten into the field. Chip Ganassi, Emerson Fittipaldi, and Josele Garza in the 6th row, and filling out row 7, Jacques Villeneuve, Chris Kneifel, and Danny Sullivan. Back in a moment after this message and a word from our local stations. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Mario Andretti has taken part in 18 Indianapolis 500s. He won this race in 1969. He's had a lot of tough luck recently, but this past week, he has really been running fast. As a matter of fact, clocked up in the 212 mile an hour class. He went out on his run today, and everybody cheered as Mario took the green flag, and this was the start of his qualifying attempt. He looked extremely smooth, Jackie Stewart.
Well, Mario, of course, enormously experienced at the 500 and every other form of motorsport, tremendously versatile driver. He drives a car that's entered by Carl Haas, a man that I used to drive for, and Paul Newman. It's easily the most popular car at the Speedway this year because Paul Newman himself is down here paying a great deal of attention, so he's quite a man. And of course, Mario himself is a great superstar and very popular.
The speed to beat at this particular point was set by Rick Mears. Rick Mears had gone out earlier and had qualified at 207.847 miles an hour. And when Mario Andretti completed the first lap, everybody screamed and yelled because look at that, 209.678.
And everybody thought this was going to be a teaser because yesterday Mario had been clocking regularly the 210, 212 mile an hour speeds. He had been close to 213 miles an hour around this speedway, which of course was expected today in qualifying. At 209 certainly was no shoddy time.
That was a new track record of 209.678. I don't know whether Mario Andretti anticipated that he could do that or not, but Sam Posey was standing right at his car when Mario pulled out of the pit. Sam, what was it like at that moment?
Well, Bill, I was watching very closely in those moments, about the minute before he left the pit. He was clearly about to make a supreme effort, no question about it. He was outwardly calm as he waited in the car, but I noticed that his breathing was very quick and shallow. He avoided making eye contact with anybody. You know, I think what people forget about Mario is that despite his fame and many accomplishments, he has not had the pole position here since 1967. When he began this run, I think he had the expectation of doing it. And, you know, Bill, the interesting thing is you watch this run closely. Of course, he's running it very, very wide around the racetrack. The fast line this year is an unprecedentedly high one, out against the wall, wide through the grooves. It takes enormous self-control and great powers of relaxation to run that line, and yet Mario is doing it here.
All right, thank you very much, Sam. And at this point, he certainly had the shot at the pole. Consider also that his son Michael had run just a little bit earlier at 207.8. And so that might have put a little added pressure. But then something happened, and Jackie Stewart saw it happen.
Well, this is the sort of thing that motor racing's all about. As he came out of turn 4, it was, coming into the final chute, suddenly Mario Andretti's engine seemed to go quiet. And here it was, you could see the reduction of speed right there. The engine failed him.
He coasted, literally coasted across the finish line and finished that at 2:02. That was the last lap. But the overall was 207.467. He was extremely disappointed, as we found out with Jack Arute.
Mario, disappointing last lap. What happened?
The ignition went dead, and just coming out of 4. Just crossed the line with a dead engine.
The disappointment must be unbearable after running so well all month now to be third fastest early on.
Yeah, at the moment it's unbearable.
Heard that interview with Mario Andretti. He then was the third fastest qualifier behind Rick Mears and his son Michael. However, as it stands right now, he is the 6th fastest qualifier, sitting on the outside of row number 2. Coming up, the Indianapolis 500, the 68th running of this classic, 2 weeks from tomorrow, May 27th, 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central, and 9 o'clock Pacific time. Of course, it will not be seen in the Indianapolis area, so we invite you to join us because it, I think, will be, with any kind of a break in the weather, could be the fastest of all time. Now let's go to Sam Posey.
Bill, this last year has seen the death of 2 people that were legends here at Indianapolis. The eldest of these, J.C. Agajanian, died last week at the age of 70. Aggie, as he was known, was a man of extraordinary flamboyance and style. He was a car owner who won Indy twice and a popular promoter of races at Ascot Park in California. Followers of the sport afforded him the sort of affection usually reserved for drivers only. Ironically, Mike Mosley, who died 9 weeks ago, had been one of Agajanian's drivers. Mike was as shy as Aggie was outgoing. Despite the skills which made him a frequent front runner here in recent years, Mike had his doubts about being a racing driver. He retired briefly from the sport and then came back here last year to sit in the middle of the front row of the grid. Mike died coming back from a day in the desert playing with his dune buggies. I think out in the desert, in the clear air which he loved so much, the clear light, Mike was most truly himself, away from the crowds, away from everything except his own great driving ability. You know, all of us here, as we stand along pit lane today, miss those two men so much. Just last year, Mike Mosley was bringing us to our feet with his accomplishments. Back to you, Bill.
Thank you, Sam, and all of us feel exactly the same way of those statements that you made about those two beloved men of racing. The first three men so far, Tom Sneva, Howdy Holmes, and Rick Mears. But remember, we have about 50 minutes to go in qualifying before they close the track, and there is still one man, A.J. Foyt. And we'll be back with more of our live reports from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Right now, let's return to Jack Whitaker, and a bit of activity occur on the track. And since that time, two drivers have qualified, Pancho Carter and Dick Simon. So Pancho Carter has made the field, and the very popular Dick Simon could become the oldest driver, I guess, to make the starting field at the age of 51. The gymnastics event that you were seeing earlier was recorded earlier this year, and in the floor exercise, Julie McNamara of the United States went out of bounds, enabling Laura Cutina of Romania to pass her for second place in the overall standings. So the final order of finish, first Mary Lou Retton of the United States, Laura Cutina of Romania, and third Julianne McNamara of the United States. Well, according to my watch, we've got about 31 minutes to go here before the track officially closes. And so a lot still could happen. And remember, A.J. Foyt is still waiting in the wings with his backup car. He looks like he's happy, but underneath all of that, he's pretty grim. We'll be back live from Indianapolis. Because of the developments here, we had to miss the final event in the Cheyenne Rodeo, the Wild Horse Race, but a dramatic moment approaches here. A.J. Foyt is on the track in his backup car trying to get that one last chance for the pole. The story developed later this afternoon because in the drawing for the qualifying attempts, he was number 54. He saw Tom Sneva set the new 1-lap and 4-lap record. A.J. went out, and on his very first lap, he turned 209. But on the second lap, things happened. Car quit, burned a piston, and he had to come back in. However, this is the backup car. He has not taken the green flag for qualifying yet. He still legally has a chance for the pole. Develop that for us, Jackie Stewart.
Well, I think A.J. Foyt, he's got incredible talent, natural ability second to none, and there you see the green flag up right now. He's got 4 laps to set another piece of history, and A.J. Foyt certainly has set history here over the years at the 500. I really don't think he's got a chance at the pole, in all fairness, Bill, because that's a tough one to crack. But it is cooler now than when Tom Sneva set that record pole position at 210.029 miles an hour. That's the speed he has to beat. I don't really think it's fair in A.J. to expect that of him right now. The great driver that he is, of course, you never know. So therefore, he can certainly do it. A.J. on still his first lap round here.
All right, remember that before in his other car, he ran 209.137. That was second fastest of the day at that point. Sam Posey has an observation.
Bill, I was with A.J. moments before he went out, and I can tell you this, he's very relaxed. He was making eye contact with everyone, nodding to his friends. He seems to draw a lot of power from his friends, and he has so many of them here, Bill, as you well know. But, you know, A.J. had a problem, which is when they were idling the engine down here, the fumes started to get in his eyes. The crew tried to fan them away, but they wound up having to shut the engine off. A.J. had to wipe his eyes out with a rag. I hope he's okay in that respect now. And remember, this man does have a special instinct for the moment. I mean, here he is literally at the 11th hour of qualifying on this first day. He has been on the pole 4 times in his career, as many times as anyone but Rex May. A.J. Foyt, quite a man, don't you think?
I think the curious thing about that is that the 4 times that he won this race, he never sat on the pole.
Well, maybe that's what he's looking for this year in Indianapolis. Of course, if he won it again, it would be 5 times, and that certainly would be another new record for A.J. Foyt. But you can see that his 2-lap speed down at 204.638 miles an hour. It's not going to be the pole for A.J. Foyt, but he's going to be in the race, and that's all that really matters. He's got such a lot of experience. He's a man that could win this race right from the back row of the grid if necessary. So A.J. Foyt will be in this race if, of course, he continues to have this engine run for him. And, of course, we've seen today several mechanical failures that have affected this lineup. A.J. Foyt getting the white flag, meaning one more lap to go, 2.5 miles around this big oval at Indianapolis.
Well, so far, unofficially, he is running 11th fastest. His 3-lap speed, or his 3rd lap speed, 2:03.335. And that's just about his overall speed for this qualifying run. He's on his final lap right now. Remember, this is live. And earlier, A.J. did run 2:09, but the engine quit on car number 14, and this is the backup car. The speed to beat, 2:10.029, set by Tom Sneva, an all-time Indy record. Checker flag for A.J. Foyt. He has made the field. And A.J. Foyt has put himself into the middle of the 4th row for the 28th running, or 68th running, I should say, of the Indy 500 at 2:04.202. That was his last lap, and as a matter of fact, his 2nd fastest. So you can see that he was really trying to do the best he could. He qualified at 2:03.860, and that is the 11th fastest qualifier in the field. As I mentioned, that would be in the middle of the 4th row. So A.J. has made the field for the 27th time. Danny Ungaius, there's a legend, and he's coming out live, and we'll be back for his qualifying run. This will be his first one of the day. Well, as you can see, we have about 11 minutes to go before this track is closed. A.J. Foyt has just come off the track in his backup car, and that took some driving to put that car in the field. Let's go to Jack Arute and find out about it from A.J.
Well, A.J., it isn't quite as fast as your first car, but you've got to be pleased.
Well, I am. You know, we just guessed at the car. We didn't really have no practice in it, and I was just an accident waiting to happen out there. I felt like to spun the first lap, and I was just trying to get it in.
4 laps in an untested car, untried as this was. You did practice in it earlier in the week. It's got to play tricks on your mind.
It really was. We took the wing off the other car and put on, but we was bottoming out, but we had our hands full.
When you take a look at this car, will you be able to bring it up to that 209-mile-per-hour speed that you had the first one through this week?
Oh, yeah. We'll change the springs like I had in the other one and everything else. It'll be there.
Looking for the 5th Indianapolis 500 this year?
We're going to try it.
Good luck to you, A.J.
Thank you.
Well, A.J. Foyt became the 27th qualifier today, and Danny Ungaius could become number 28. Time is running out. There's nobody lined up behind him, and the green flag is out for Danny Ungaius from Santa Ana, California, a young man who really has had his turns at bad luck. You remember 1981, a horrifying crash in that turn 3. Many of us didn't think he could survive it.
No, I have to say that observing that accident, I would have been perfectly happy to hear Danny Ungaius saying that when he came out of hospital that he might just hang it up and try something else. But Danny Ungaius is an extraordinarily determined man. And after that horrific accident that I think was probably the most widely viewed accident at Indianapolis in recent years, he did come back, and here you see him today at a time when the temperatures, of course, are quite low tonight, and they're a lot cooler than they were earlier in the day, and this does help those cars perform. Danny Ungaius' first lap is 203.740 miles an hour, and the engine is smoking. That's not a good sign. It's smoking quite heavily now. You may see a yellow flag being thrown because the observers around this racetrack can throw the yellow flag if they think that it could be dangerous. Ungaius may not know about that smoke. It could be a fluid, an oil dropping on the racetrack. Something seems to fly out there. It's smoking more. It could be oil on the surface, so therefore Ungaius is in potential danger here if he doesn't know about that, and the official's not throwing the yellow flag quite right yet. It's still a green flag for him. Let's hope that is not a slippery condition that he will be entering now, because this is where we saw this smoke and perhaps potentially fluid falling on the racetrack.
All right, his second lap was 2:04.091. His first lap was 2:03.748. Sam Posey, are you surprised?
Bill, no, I'm not. Jackie mentioned the temperature drop. It has dropped all the way from 122 degrees, that's the temperature right on the track, down to 110, and that makes a big difference in the amount of horsepower the car can make. On the other side of the coin, though, a problem that Danny faces now is that as he comes down the main straight, past the start-finish line, you see him there, he's going into deep shadow. Now, from the driver's standpoint, he's going 215, 220 miles an hour right now. That means he's trying to point that car into a very narrow spot on the track, right there in dark conditions. Then he bursts back out into the light. So driving right now isn't easy, despite the fact he has a little more horsepower than he would have earlier.
All right, his third lap, 204.068, and the fact that we saw smoke, the fact that we thought we saw something fly off the car earlier has not bothered Danny Ongais. Nerves of steel. Maybe he doesn't even know about it. Who knows? All he has in his mind right now is to make this field, and he only has half a lap to go. 204.068, nobody else in line, and here he comes. The checkered flag should be out for Danny Ongais. And Danny has made the 68th running of the Indianapolis 500. There is nobody else in line right now. And we question what has happened to Johnny Rutherford. Will he get a ride? Well, earlier he was out in the day. He ran a 198 and 198.9. Then he was flagged off in car number 84. He wasn't fast enough. So the three-time winner, Johnny Rutherford, may be once again sidelined this year as he was last year. Last year it was because of injury. Danny Ongais, however, has replaced A.J. Foyt as the 11th fastest qualifier, and he moves in to the middle of the fourth row.
In the
Well, for the first time today, the track has been declared, believe it or not, open for practice. I mean the first time since it was open for qualifying. So we kind of have to catch our breath here a little bit because qualifying actually began about 12:15, and that was about an hour and 15 minutes later than normal because of an unusual amount of crashes in practice. They have to give the drivers a certain amount of time to practice. So the way things have turned out, with about 4 minutes to go, they have opened the track for practice, and here's the way things stand with 28 cars qualified. Tom Sneva supplying all of the fireworks today, setting the 1-lap and 4-lap average, and that is the 4-lap average in all-time 2:10.029, and I think Howdy Holmes has to be the second best story of the day. He literally came out of nowhere to move into the middle of the first row. Rick Mears out to the outside of row 1. Then Michael Andretti, Gordon Johncock, and Mario Andretti. That's a great second row, isn't it? The rookie from Colombia, Roberto Guerrero, has gotten into row 3. Jeff Brabham and Herm Johnson filling that out. And then as it stands, row 4, Al Unser Sr., Danny Ongais, and A.J. Foyt. What a wonderful row that is. Tom Gloria, rookie, Teo Fabi, and Al Unser Jr. behind them. Then in row 6, Al Holbert, Tony Bettenhausen, Bobby Rahal. In the 7th row, Pat Bedard, Dick Simon, and Pancho Carter. In the 8th row, Chip Ganassi, Emerson Fittipaldi, a rookie, Jose Garza from Mexico, Spike Gelhausen, Jacques Villeneuve from Canada, and Chris Kneifel. And the 28th qualifier, Danny Sullivan, in row 10. Now, the average speed, 203.536 miles an hour. Isn't that remarkable? With 41 presentations and 28 qualifiers. I'll tell you this, that is 5 miles an hour faster right now than the field was a year ago, and we didn't ever think they'd get 200.
Tremendous day, great speed, great driving. I think it's going to make a tremendous 500. I'm looking forward to it, Bill.
Well, I think that everybody is looking forward to the race 2 weeks from tomorrow, of course, the 68th running of this race. Don't forget there are 3 more days of qualifying, and next Sunday we will be back with you for what is always a lot of fun, the Bubble Show.
Sure, a March Cosworth is almost assured of being the winning car. Of the first 7 rows, made up of 3 cars to a row, all but 2 of the 21 vehicles are March Cosworths. Lou Palmer has a preview of Sunday's Indianapolis 500.
They call it Gasoline Alley, even though Indy cars haven't burned gasoline since 1964. But right now, in the garages along Gasoline Alley, final preparations are being made for this year's Indy 500, and it could be quite a competitive field. How do you go about even judging who are the favorites? Well, some of the competitors in this year's race take a closer look.
Well, I think there's certain people that, from my point of view, that I know are going to be tough in the race, and you know, you hope that you can run with them. And
name a few?
Well, there's people like Tom Sneva, Mario, Rick Mears. There's 3
guys I feel that I've got to beat to win the race, and they're running with good teams, and they're going to be tough. So you just go into the race, and hopefully you know your car's handling well, your pit stops go well, and you end up running with them, and then anything can happen.
Well, I think, like I said, you're going to see 20 cars running right good and strong at the start. It's going to be a matter of a car that can finish, and that nobody can guess as to what it'll be. But the front runners, you're going to look at the front row, front 2 rows. They're highly, possible to come up a winner because they got a good starting spot and they're fast cars. But we got a lot of fast cars in the back of the pack. We got Foyt behind me, or Foyt's ahead of me. We got Foyt's other 2 cars with Snyder and Rutherford in them behind me. I wouldn't even want to guess. My guess is myself. That way it's up to me.
No question about it. There's several race drivers that could win this race. I'd say that at least 10 or 12 of them. I'd say that if Sneva runs all day, he is really going to be tough to handle. I think that the guys that can really possibly give him competition naturally is going to be Rick Mears and Mario Andretti. And if they can keep their equipment together, I think that they would certainly be his biggest competitors. But if them 3 run all day, they're really going to be tough to beat.
Some other cars will bear watching in Sunday's race. Howdy Holmes, Tom Sneva's teammate, starts in the middle of the front row and certainly has enough power to do it in his 4th try at Indianapolis. 1982 winner Gordon Johncock will be after his 3rd victory in Indy. He's as steady a driver as they come, and he will start between the Andrettis in the middle of the 2nd row. The winningest Indy 500 driver of all time, 4-time champion A.J. Foyt, could make it 5. He's competed in more races than anyone, 26. He has a decent car and will start outside of the 4th row. A.J. is always a threat here at the Brickyard. Picking a winner, well, that's practically impossible, so let's not even try.